We've been rocking since the Sandbox, man. Stop playing with my dog, Scooper Steve. He the man, got plans, bro, to give him what you need. Hot damn, from the court to the field, they elite. I'm saying why, yes, got the hot takes and loose, stay checking. Talking about all the highlights from alleys to interceptions, from tutties to dope receptions and fantasy week projections. And honestly think you gotta tune in to get the message. Let's go.
Since the Sandbox fans, we are live in Sammy Carlo's for our first live podcast here in the building. We have a very special guest here today. Stevie, will you please introduce yourself?
I'm Steve Scire. I'm owner of Sammy Carlo's Delicatessen and Catering. Before that, my dad had it. Before that, my grandfather had it. He's married to Kathleen. I don't want to forget my wife.
No, of course.
I have my two grandsons, Bobby and Benjamin. My daughter Jessica, my daughter Kayla, my son Stevie works over there, and we have Bobby's my son-in-law, and we have Andy, my son-in-law.
And we got all hands on deck today.
All hands on deck. Stevie still helps out, helps out on a Saturday and comes by and helps up when he can,
Yeah.
when he can.
No, it's important.
Yeah, we started. My grandfather started in '27. And he came over from Sicily, and he started on Drake Place.
Okay.
Some of the old timers know about that.
Yeah.
And it was like a basement apartment. When you go to Drake Place off of Chelsea Street, it's a loop, and it comes around. You go in one way, come out the other way, and going towards Mavericks on the right-hand side. But that's where he started. He came over with nothing and started in a basement store, and then from there we went to like Bennington Street. We went to mid-Bennington Street around Savas.
Okay.
And they came to Byron Street, and they came here in 74.
Nice, 74. So been here ever since.
Been here ever since.
We love that, and been strong in the community, obviously. But I feel like family is so important when you're in here, because you do see your family. Whether you're here or not on a given day. Always somebody running the kitchen. Everyone's always here. Very welcoming, saying hello to everybody from East Boston. The familiar faces. And even the new faces, making sure that everybody feels, very accustomed to here and everything like that. But, you just mentioned that it opened in 74, but I just want you to reflect. You really got into detail about how everything kind of got started, like you mentioned, coming to Savas and the Drake Place and things like that. But, since then, it's really been, a long journey for you. And I know you love it every single day. You love coming here. Yeah. So if you want to, just reflect a little bit on it, we'd love to hear it.
So as far as my experience goes, I'll go back to my dad, because my grandfather passed away before I was born. And we were up at Byron Corner, Byron and Bennington, and that was a great corner.
Okay.
That had a lot of like really neighborhood kids, neighborhood families, and that was an awesome corner. I can remember we moved out of there when I was 12, but that's what, you make your friendships, your closest friendships.
Of course, yeah.
And then it's just like everybody in the neighborhood, everybody in the side street. But that was my journey, that basically I had pushed my kids away from the business. And I said, they all want to come back, they can come back. But it was different for me, because I was there since I was like 10, 11 years old.
Yeah.
So I was entrenched in there. My father, I decided to come in with my dad. It's not like he dragged me here. I wanted to come here. So I would go crazy, and I love Medford, but I just felt this was home.
Yeah.
And my friends were here, and worked since I was 12. Came over here, went to grammar school over there. It was dying to come over here. Went to Savio in 76, and 74 we moved down here, because they had taken over the properties. The Salesian Order took over the property.
Yeah.
This place is bad.
We love that.
And I can understand that. They wanted the property, and they wanted to expand what they had, and it just so happened the gentleman guy was retiring here.
Oh, wow.
And my dad came in here, and from there, it was 74. I took over in 84, got married in 85, and it was on from there. It's just
history ever since, right?
Yeah.
No, and I think it's really cool. I think this was a really specific spot that we wanted to choose inside of here, because we see some of that history right here behind us, and I feel like that's really cool, because we get the old school feel, but we get that family environment every time I walk in here. Like, before you ask me what I want for a sub or food, or whether I'm calling in, whatever, Stevie, how you doing? It's nice to see you. And I feel like that's so valuable, because a lot of time when we have different people inside this neighborhood coming in, coming out, they don't understand They don't understand the community aspect and environment that's really entrenched in East Boston. I feel like that's so important. And you know, you mentioned it, like, I've known Kev since when we were babies, you know what I mean? And now we're sitting here having a conversation. Yeah. He used to live right upstairs.
I came in for lunch this week, and Stevie was like, "You ready for Saturday?" I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "You nervous?" I was like, "Oh, not really." He's like, "Yeah, it's your home turf," and I'm like, "Yeah, it literally is. Like, not only figuratively does it feel like home, but I used to live right upstairs. So,
but your home is your neck, you know.
Exactly. Absolutely. And Danielle had asked me, you know, the same thing too. She was like, "Oh, like, do you still get like nervous when you like anticipate doing this? There's people coming in." But we've done this so many times. Right. Like, we've been used to like the live environment, and this is just any other conversation that we've had on a daily basis coming into Sammy Carlo. So that's why, you know, we really think it's such a unique experience. What's up, Mike? Really think it's such a unique experience. So I have up here next, Stevie, what's Sammy Carlo's #1 choice or most ordered item? And I feel like this is really different depending on who you ask, but because you're the man in the kitchen, you're getting all the food, you really know what comes, what goes, and what people really like. So love to hear that.
I would say, you know, it's probably 1, 2, 3. I would say the Italian, because a lot of people come back to an Italian. Yeah. And I would say second to that would be the chicken cutlet and steak.
Okay. You know? Love that.
What's up? Like we said, it's on.
Yeah, absolutely. How we doing?
Like we said, it's home.
Yeah, absolutely. How we doing? You can't go wrong either way. Like, the cutlet's good no matter what sandwich you put it in. I have to share my go-to favorites, the District 1. I get it every time, but every time I make the call to order it, they're like, "You really want it?" Because I say no tomato, no blue cheese. That's just the way I like it.
It's your go-to. Yeah.
But you know, the Italian is such a classic, and you know, like I said, just being able to come in here and get that type of conversation while you're getting your food just makes you enticed to come in here. You know, all that more. So you said the Italian, you said the cutlet. What was the third item that you said?
I would say steak, because it's unique, and we don't, and not wrong with it, because I'll tell you, back in the day I was a big Domino's fan.
Okay.
You know what I mean? You know what I mean? You know, just I was, you know, there's nothing better.
Yeah.
But we don't use shaved steak. We cut the steak ourselves. Cut the steak. We real flat meat. And it's just like you get tips on the weekend, you know, barbecue, but we just cut them up small. And then cut them up small so it's easier to eat on the sandwich, and that would be probably #1, 2, 3.
Yeah, no, I would definitely say that. I was gonna say that's my second favorite would be the steak and cheese. So you can't go wrong. Nicholas just got one of the steak sandwiches over there. So good, we love that. So this is what we're all about here. But that's you know what your consumers really like. But I'm sure, you know, there's a couple of times where either you take some food home or you're just like, wow, I can't wait to have that. What would you say that your favorite menu item, either to consume or to make, is?
I would say I always, if I were just gonna close my eyes, I go to Italian tuna.
Okay, Italian tuna.
I do Italian tuna. I like that, and I like the steak.
Yeah,
I like the steak.
Good.
If it's a go-to.
Yeah. We love that. Kev, what would you say your go-to is?
I have a few. I mean, obviously the steak is unreal. I'm personally a Godfather fan.
Okay.
I love the Godfather.
I feel like you're a meatball sub guy too.
I was gonna say the meatball sub too. I was gonna say the meatball.
I come in here once a week for lunch. I always get the meatball
sub too. I come in here once a week for lunch, and I always get the meatball sub. And I feel like for me, that's what I base a lot of sub shops off. Like, some people will base it off their Italian or their chicken parm. For me, it's meatball, because like, you learn a lot about a place from their meatball.
Meatball sub,
and it's the best around. So
it's funny you said that, because when I first started, I don't want to get into the journey yet, not yet, but I mean, if you have another question, but when we started wiping out the table, the aisles, my first thing was the gravy and the meatballs. And I would make them at home and take them home and take them back in a pot. It was my mother's recipe.
Okay.
But that was the first one, and all of a sudden it's like, you know, it's not getting its recognition.
No, trust me.
But you know, but I never mentioned the meatball, but meatballs up there.
Always a go-to. We love that. And you know, when you were looking at the menu, for someone that isn't around the East Boston area, they might not fully understand, you know, some of the names and what's going on in the menu. And I feel like it's really unique. And there's some of them that I want to know the backstory on too. Yeah. So just some names I put down here. I mentioned the District 1 was my personal favorite, but we got the Sammy, Wammy, Bammy, the Godfather, the Dino. So do you mind telling us where those names really came from and what they are?
So the District 1 started because the fire department in East Boston is known as the District 1 fire department. I do district 7 for the police department.
Okay.
So they're the District 7.
Okay.
Sammy, Wammy, Bammy's got a pretty good history, story behind it, because back in the day when Scire was open, there was this gentleman that came in, Michael Feeney.
Okay.
And he's from South Boston, and he was a great kid. And he used to come in all the time. My dad would be working, I'd be just hanging out, and he'd come in like a stormtrooper. He'd come in with the Salty guys, like about 5, 6 of them, all football players.
Of course, they're hungry.
He'd walk in the door with all his gear, getting on the Wood Island, and the first thing he'd say coming to the door is, Sammy, Wammy, Bammy. Coming by, Sammy, Wammy, Bammy.
Yeah.
So I said, I got to name one after him.
Yeah.
Wow, I love that.
And actually, the item that it's like the teriyaki chicken is from my nephew Paul. I said I need help doing like what should I have in it?
Yeah.
And it was a chicken cutlet with the teriyaki sauce and melted provolone.
Wow.
So it was from that's what his go-to was with the hot peppers. But
I'm getting hungry.
That's funny.
that was from Michael Feeney, South Boston, and that's kudos to those guys, because we had all different groups of kids.
Yeah.
You had your Revere kids and East Boston kids, Charlestown, Southie, Dorchester. What a great crew.
And they all came here.
Yeah.
We love that.
That's so funny. Like, who would think like an Irish kid from Southie would have a sub named after him in an Italian sub shop? You know what I mean? I love that.
He made a good footprint in here. He was a great kid. I think that with Dino was actually misspelled.
Okay.
Not in your, on my part.
Okay.
That's like Dean Martin.
Okay.
Okay.
Godfather, I did after my grandfather. And Giovanna was like my mother's middle name.
Yeah.
So I did that burger.
We love that.
Yeah.
We love that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I feel like those stories are all really cool, unique, and for somebody that isn't familiar with the area, it's cool to hear those backstories. So shout out Michael Feeney.
Yeah.
You gotta come back and come see your guy Stevie. All right. But we recently had some renovations here, and the place, it still keeps that old school vibe, and I love that. That's why, like I said, I wanted to keep the old school seats. We have the pictures here, and I feel like it really tells the story of the history of Sammy Carlo's. But outside, we got the nice patio set now. We kept the tables, but we got some games outside.
Right.
You keep the bush nice and clean out there, so it's always a nice scene, whether you go out there. But talk to us about. Talk to us about what really went behind all of that, why you decided to keep this type of stuff on the inside, and why you chose to do all that on the outside.
So I wanted to keep this in the inside, because some of the stuff I had to get secondhand from a diner in Worcester, actually.
Okay.
But that table originally over there, that was my grandmother's.
Oh, really?
wow.
Yeah,
Love
was
that.
my grandmother's. This was a gentleman that came in. That was his grandmother's.
Okay. Oh, wow.
So I kept those tables. I had it down the basement, and I want to keep the old school look, because it just, what it is. It kind of. It's almost like after a while you say, "What are you about?"
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So it's like I felt like I was about like here.
Yeah.
So it's like putting your footprints in the store, being here since so long with my grandfather, my father, and I just felt like I just wanted to keep that vibe. I didn't want to get it too new. When we did the rehab, we did the outside, and I told my son, I told my wife, I said, I think it was in July, and I said, I think we'll get a scrap our vacation. We scrapped our vacation. She wasn't too happy, but we scrapped our vacation this year,
really?
and we just went to it. And the walls were the original walls. We just painted them. My son was with me. We tore down the ceiling, put the old tin ceiling up there, new HVAC system. But I wanted to keep that when we redid the pictures, instead of getting all the old, sometimes you go to a lot of places, they have the old pictures that you can get secondhand, all that. I wanted to get more neighborhood.
Yeah.
So everything's more like right in Harbor View, like this neighborhood.
Yes.
Love that. That's something that that's something I think is unique about here, is like, like you have, and I don't know about any other communities. You guys know this.
Yeah.
You have the Point. You have Maverick. You have Orion Heights. You have the Madonna.
For sure.
You have Harbor View. You have Eagle Hill, and they're all separate. Like, but they come together, but they're always from the neighborhood.
Absolutely,
You know what I mean?
absolutely.
Where you're from? You're from East Boston, but you're from the Point.
Yeah.
You know
No,
what I mean?
you have, and everybody always repped the neighborhood that they really came from, even like when we were kids. So like, I don't want to say that it faded out. Like, obviously we have different demographics in East Boston now, and I feel like it's more becoming of just that East Boston, but we always pride ourselves on those specific neighborhoods. And Stevie, I would take this walk when I was working at the Boys and Girls Club. I come down and get a breakfast sub. If you guys don't know about breakfast subs, one of the best. So come and get a bacon, egg, and cheese. You'll be full for the whole day, I promise. But you know, either walking down for lunch, taking some of the kids because they wanted to come and grab a slice of pizza or whatever it was. And you know, we're gonna talk more on what you did for the community a little bit later on. But I feel like that's what was always so like welcoming here, was that no matter who you were, as long as you entered these doors, you knew that you were welcomed here, and like that was always, you know, so important. But you know, you really mentioned all of this being part of, you know, a family or a friend of a family, and how it really made this a unique setting and environment. But I want you to talk about being in a family business, being able to work with your immediate family, your wife. You have your in-laws in here too.
Robbie,
so
my son-in-law's here. My grandson, Jessica.
Love that. We love that. We love that. So, you know, you have your local customers, you have your staff in the family, or people you hire from the neighborhood. Shout out to Josh Best over there doing his thing, whipping up some sandwiches. We got you. Yeah, we got you. You know, really just tell us all about why it's so special to you and why you choose to continue to have Sammy Carlo's be filled with that type of people.
So it probably starts back with my mom and dad, and they were pretty active in the community. As far as like my dad grew up on Horace Street. That's where he lived, and my mom was originally from Chelsea. But growing up in the store, they always went to community events. St. Mary's always had something going on. You know, Skip ran, like Mr. Cuneo ran stuff. It was like they just ran tons of stuff. Mr. Porter. They ran tons of events, and they were always entrenched. It wasn't like they just did business and went home. You know, they were entrenched in the community, and I saw that. And you know, me growing up in the store, my sister Pamela growing up in the store, we were always involved with the store, and that's how my kids did. I think Jessica, how old were you when you started?
Wow, we love that.
She was 12. She was 12 at the register. She was doing the register, and of course it was a manual one.
Yeah.
And then Kayla come in. Stevie still works here to this day. He's engaged now, so he's probably
congratulations.
Yeah, he's going to be married pretty soon with them. So that's probably going to stop.
Yeah.
so he still helps out on the Saturdays when he can. And like I said, Jessica started here, you know, probably the youngest. Well, to a point, the youngest. Legitimate, because she was doing the register. And I always loved that, because I wanted them to get the feel of like waiting on people and knowing people and talking to people in the neighborhood and like understand what that's about. You know what I mean, you're just not making a transaction.
Right.
It's not just a transaction.
For sure.
You know, it's I think it's important.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And
you know,
Kev, I mean, just to add to this a little bit, you had roommates upstairs that would come in, and they would be from not even all over Massachusetts, but you had some coming from Pennsylvania, you know what I mean? And I know you even took a couple of them in and brought them in, taught them the Sammy Carlo's way, but whether they were coming down as an employee or they were coming down here to get the subs, I feel like they really felt a part of that right away. And obviously you being from East Boston, that was something that was really helpful to help them get acclimated. A person like very familiar, knowing Stevie from way back when. But I feel like that's really special. I know you want to touch on that like a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, like you said, I mean, a lot of people know, but for those who don't know, we moved in here our senior year of, or my senior year of when we were playing baseball at Suffolk. And it was so funny because before then, a lot of like, at least for Suffolk, I don't know about the other colleges around Boston, but at least like Suffolk, like a lot of people were moving to East Boston still, you know what I mean? Like, because like you said, they weren't from the area. A lot of them weren't even from Massachusetts, so
they're just looking for an apartment.
Yeah, they're just looking downtown. Like a lot of them were in the North End and stuff. And then when we had moved here, not only did they love the apartment, but they loved Stevie. They loved the restaurant. Like my roommates would come down here for breakfast every morning, and then they started telling my teammates about it, and then then the parents started coming in before baseball games, and it got to a point where like Stevie's bringing 6-foot subs down to our games, like to feed us in between double headers. And like
we even got a 6-foot sub at the pop-up event back in the day.
Exactly. Like just like being here and like you said, interacting with Steve. Like not only did they come through these doors, but it also kind of like paved the way for more of my teammates to move to East Boston. And it really was like cool to see, because they were like, all right, like there is still like neighborhood genuine people in East Boston. It's not the bad rep that it gets from outside of like people outside of East Boston. You know what I mean? So it was really, it was really cool to see. So you're kind of like a mogul, and you didn't even know it, Steve. You know?
A living legend. Absolutely. Come on.
I would say that.
No, absolutely, Steve. But we talked about Sammy Carlos and how this all really kind of got brought up, but now we want to reflect on the East Boston community a little bit. I know we touched upon it a lot throughout those conversations, but I feel like it's always so different when people talk about it. And East Boston, is something that if I get sliced, you're going to be able to see that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm bleeding blue and gold. I would say the same for all of us. But whether this is for the restaurant specifically, or you specifically, or if you want to get into a little bit of both, just talk about the East Boston community, what it's really meant to your family and for your business.
So, I think it's important because I think it's important because when it's all said and done, it's all done. It's like you look back at yourself, and a lot of times you say to yourself, "What good did you do?"
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, what did you affect? Who did you affect? What changes have you made?
Absolutely.
Right, exactly. So to make an impact, you have to have relationships in the neighborhood, and you have to have conversation with the people and understand that they're just, like I said earlier, it's not just a transaction. It's like there's people behind, there's families behind that. I can remember way back that my mother was famous for, like somebody would come in and all of a sudden, you would get engaged or whoever, and somebody all of a sudden your wife had a baby, and it's like she'd have a baby like a christening gift. Like it was just different,
Absolutely.
It was. I think it's really important. It's especially my dad up in the old corner. He had a lot of good relationships, and I think I saw that at a young age that he would talk. He would just it was kind of a meeting place. Even when we came down here, that people would talk in the corner or inside the store, and they would talk about everything. And it wasn't just like place where you just come and buy something, like I said, but you would just like have conversations and talk about not only politics but just everything going on in the community, in the neighborhood, the parish. It's just.
Yeah.
I think that was. I don't know if I lose my train of thought. Let me know,
No, it's all good.
But I think that's really important, and then you keep touch with people's there's people's triumphs and there's people's tragedies.
Yeah.
And you want to be sensitive to both. And you see that every day. So. You have no choice but to be really intertwined with the community.
Absolutely.
It's like it affects you.
No, it does. Yeah. And something that I would just say with that is when we started the podcast, before we were even we're not like that established now, but you were asking for stickers on when we had the COVID glass up. We had stickers on the cooler. We still got it over there on the cooler door. Yeah. And that was just as a youth growing up in East Boston, and now as I continue and like you talked about, with that impact, now we're teaching podcasting at Parish Street. When COVID was going on, all those laptops that East Boston High School had the Since the Sandbox sticker on it, and whether the kids just thought it was a cool sticker or they felt like they really had a unique relationship with Coach Kev, with myself, as like teachers and people in the building, I feel like that was all really important, and that's why we do things like this, because we have a setup at home. We don't have to choose to do things like this, but you've done so much for the community, and that's going to be our next step that we've really done. You finally starting to get recognized for all the great work that you do. I
think it has something to speak for. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
But it's like guys like you, like. At one time, like you were 5-6-year-old running around. And so when you go to a community and when you go you I know you both interact with the youth. Like you just want to, it's almost like you see something and you want to tell them I saw something.
Yeah.
And you say, listen, if I can do this, you can do this in a different fashion. It doesn't have to be podcasting. It could be something else. It could be starting up a business. It could be anything.
For sure.
And then I think that's a message you want to send.
Yeah.
I think you guys do a great job with that.
Thank you. And I feel like oftentimes, especially when we were growing up, sports were always a way that people would find connections through it, and that is a big area that's pushed. But now you're starting to see more people into the media or the video games or just any other activities that they're interested in. And I hope that with this podcast and just being able to reflect on that a little bit, that people find their interest and continue to find ways to not only continue pursuing it for themselves, for the joy of themselves, but also a career path, and to inspire other people to whatever they like to do, that they could still continue to do that as well. So I feel like that's really important. But you just mentioned showing yourself and just being that presence that reflects on people when we were at a young age and things like that. This past June, you were just recognized by the East Boston Athletic Board for the Humanitarian Award. So a quick little round of applause to you, Stevie.
We love that. We love that.
Everybody, thank you. But I just want you to talk about why that is so important to you, and just share that recognition.
I think it's important. Not that I got it. It's just like because I talked to Tommy and Dave too. I say I think you got the wrong guy. But they were giving me a hard time about it. But I think what's important about it is at the end of the day, you want, like I said earlier, you want to be able to support others around you. And if they're looking for help, if you can pick and choose what you can help and what you can do, and you're in that position to do so, I think you have an obligation to do so.
Absolutely.
Long time ago, I was in here, and after a while, like you say to yourself, like, there's a lot of time of reflection. I mean, you guys might have that too. You reflect a lot of time. A lot of times, sometimes I'm short-handed. This is years ago, or even now, whatever. I'll be mopping up, coming back, and say, what am I doing? Like, and then you realize, like, if you have a certain talent, or not talent, but if you have a certain skill set that you're doing, right, and you have a certain job, that you can apply that to someone else, then, you know what I mean? You have to do that. You have to pass that forward.
Absolutely.
Like you guys are doing media and communication, all that. You pass that forward. That's your gig. That's what you do, whether it's baseball or this or whatever. You have to pass that forward. And I feel like if I can do that, if I can take, like, with my children, I think it's a good thing to have them in the business because, like I said earlier, they get out, they talk to people, they know how to conduct themselves. You do it like this, you don't do it like that. You don't do it half-assed, you do it the right way, you don't do it the wrong way. The same thing with, say, for instance, Josh was a good example that I'm always on him, I'm constantly on him because he was here since he was 12. But it's almost like you want to develop yourself. You know what I mean? You want to develop yourself more than harder than you're working at what you're doing for career. And that's what you guys do. You have your gig, but then this is your passion. This is what you have fun with.
Absolutely.
But,
and if we can make other people like you come and have fun, have a conversation, and just have other people learn about why this is such a great place and why you need to come in here, you either get a breakfast sub, a meatball sub, or any type of sub on the menu, or order a 6-foot one, and I promise you'll have enough for the week. But no, I mean that award is really cool, and being part of the athletic board, there really is not anybody else more deserving than you to get that. So whether it's personally you pushing trays of food up to the Boys and Girls Club so the kids can have an end of the summer party, just to reflect on that. And Josh was one of those kids, and now he's in there in the kitchen doing it now. So I feel like that just really speaks, wonders. But, we mentioned the East Boston community with the athletic board, but I feel like East Boston is always compared to Boston specifically, but I feel like this community is so different than anywhere else because you have people from different backgrounds that all kind of come here, and I feel like East Boston is such a diverse place to feel authentically you and be able to pursue either your passions, the things that you like, whether it's in a school environment or whatever else.
Oh God.
What's why is this community different?
I think it's different because I had a few jobs written down here, but I think it's different because I know the people from different communities, they stay bonded and all that, but I think people from East Boston, they just, whether they grew up here, they worked here, they lived here, or they just entrenched in the community, they feel like they're part of the fabric of it, and they always come back.
For sure.
They always say, a lot of my friends, they're outside the areas, but they know they're truly from East Boston. And I think East Boston honestly has a unique position too, like geographically.
Yep.
So I mean, I can remember I said this the other day. I was telling my daughter, my son-in-law, when we did the Taste of EC, I said we used to play basketball down at Presley Park, and we used to play in the Maverick Projects, and we knew that was only 15, 16.
Yeah, and the view down there is incredible.
You finish up a game, you turn around and you say, oh my God, and this is 15, 16 years old.
Yeah.
And I turn around and I said, this is unbelievable. Not that I want to develop, but I look around and said, this is unbelievable what you're looking at.
City's in your back door, yeah.
Really.
So you're looking at, like, you know, you treasure the glasses for most, figuratively speaking, the glass is like, you know, like Boston, you know, but you can't see Boston from inside the glass.
No.
Right.
So when you're in East Boston, you're outside the glass, you're looking at it, and it's a phenomenal position that East Boston has, that you're looking from the outside, right there inside of Boston, and it's the best view around.
It is. I mean, before even that area was developed, I mean, we were walking around like just going to soak it all in, appreciate it, before even knowing what it would come to be. Like, I still remember the Bremen Street Park before there was grass there.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, you know, going back, I feel like this is a staple tied into Carlo specifically. St. Mary's, Tower of the Sea, people would come here before school. Like, I remember when we were at Central Catholic and St. Mary's had just started, like, closing down, and they all talked about, like, we would go there before school, like, we go and get either a sub or you go and get this or that, whatever. Obviously, Betty Ann's across the street, too. But then being able to walk over for lunch after school, you come here with friends. Like, we remember it growing up, just being, you know, that type of a presence, and now we have the XL here, so it's cool to have a different type of school, but we've really seen East Boston in the past 20 years change, and it's going to continue to, you know, really do so.
To reapproach the question you asked about why, you know, about the community and all that, that you touched on it, that's mostly why, I'm sure you guys feel this, that's why I like to give back to, like, especially Salesian. Because you know what it was like growing up in Salesian.
Right. Exactly.
Like, that was our back door. That was literally our back door. So we were on that corner. So I would come out my back door, and Brother Joe would be there. Brother Joe would be there. There was a little house there, and I mean, my playground was the schoolyard.
Right.
And it was like, between that and then just the amenities that East Boston has, you go down, you have the rink in the summertime. They have no ice. You'd have everything down there. As you can, like, when you think back in as an adult, that's golden for a kid.
Yeah.
It keeps him busy all day long.
For sure.
I would go out early in the morning. I wouldn't come home till, like, you know, till my father was closing up.
So you heard the church bells or the street lights going on?
Absolutely. But so you look at that and you say, if I had that, like, the future generations have to have that.
Yeah.
Like a better version. They've even, you know, improved the Salesians. There was down Sacred Heart, Paris Street, but at that time it's like, you just had a lot of activities to do, and you feel like you want to keep that going.
Absolutely, you know? Absolutely. And I'm sure that's why, you know, you can continue to, like, give back the way you do. And it's not just, you know, food donations. You know, you're giving your time. You've made financial contributions to really do all that. So, like, if people can't just say, oh, like, he's just bringing us this, you're fully committed to the youth, to giving back, and making sure that the generation of the future understands the presence of community that we've really instilled.
And I feel like that's the crazy thing too about East Boston, is like that has been something that just is like an ongoing thing, and it's almost like a lot of people do the like types of things like give back to the community because they feel like it's an obligation, but I feel like growing up in East Boston, it's almost like that's the goal. Like you work your whole life so that you can be in a position to give back to East Boston. You know what I mean? Where it's not like, all right, like, yeah, you know, like there's a lot of people that move out and become very successful and are very financially stable and all that.
That's fine too.
Yeah, that's fine too. But like even with them, like it's so cool to see, like, oh, it's not just because, all right, like I'm rich now, I have to give back. Like, no, it's like, all right, I worked my whole life to be in this position so that now I can give back to the Salesians. I can give money to East Boston Central Catholic. I can give money to wherever needs it in the community. And I feel like that's such like a cool thing and such like a cool way of being raised, because like even for me, I'm like, yeah, like the goal is to become like successful one day and financially stable and all that, but not because I want to be driving a Lamborghini. It's because I want to write a check for whatever amount of money that, like I said, the Salesians needs, and just know that I can help in that way. You know what I mean?
That's well explained.
Yeah, like it's
exactly,
it's crazy.
You see that as a young person
exactly.
now, you know?
Yeah.
You just want to get to that point that like you want to give something back.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
And I feel like that specifically is so important to us, because we all grow up with challenges or struggles throughout the community, but I always felt like in East Boston specifically, like I mentioned throughout the episode, whether this was through sports, through school, just through friends, family, whatever, you always had people to go to, even if they weren't your first bloodline or whatever it was. Like Stevie, if I was having a tough day and I came in here and sat down and I had my hand on my head, you'd be the first person to come over and say, Stevie, what's the matter? You're not yourself today. And you know, you can say that about, you know, a Johnny Forbes, a Debbie White who was just in here.
Yeah.
And
Even work Debbie White's, I mean, had done how many kids she's touched.
Right.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Johnny Forbes, everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody.
And that's just to name a very, very small amount, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's why I think more specifically, rather than just saying, like you mentioned, Kev, oh, hey, take this. It's not only take this, but I'm giving this to you because I want to, because I had so many people like that when I was a young adolescent or a teenager, this and that, growing up, that I feel obligated to make sure that that's provided for the youth, whether they're coming from East Boston or whether they're coming from an outside city.
That's funny you said that, because it just to elaborate on that, I don't know if you've heard him, Tommy Tassinari, he was told a funny story that when he was...
Shout out Tom.
When we were at the banquet, he said to us, he said, when he was younger, actually maybe when he had children, Max and when Tiana, when they were, probably when Tommy was younger, because we knew their parents too, but they always said, if you ever get in trouble, just go into Sammy's.
Exactly.
It's like something's going on, or you know, whatever. Say it's like you know, like something crazy, weather's coming in, but mostly like, you feel unsafe and there's somebody outside. You know, no cell phones back then.
Right. Yeah.
So if you ever get in trouble, you're on the corner, just run into Sammy's. I said, I think that was a funny story.
Yeah. See.
But you'd never think of that stuff.
No, you're right.
Like that's not. There's no price you can pay on that.
Right.
No.
Exactly.
You're not giving any food. You're not giving any money. That's like priceless. That you know that your kid is safe.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I remember, you know, as we were teens too, like when we were just looking for like things to do in the area, it was always like, oh, like let's walk to Carlos, let's go to the beach, like let's go play baseball at Noise. You know what I mean? It was just such like a normal process of like what we did, that it was just like second nature to us, you know. So that's why we're happy to be here today, happy to share this journey and reflect. But on Since the Sandbox, we talk a lot about community, but you know, we also talk about sports, so that's what's coming up next. Before we get to the sports section, Steve, you know, I just want you to share, you know, some of your favorite memories, whether this is personally to you or, you know, just the restaurants, the presents, whatever it is, about East Boston that really has resonated with you.
So I would say one of my favorite memories is back in the day, '74, when we moved from the old corner to here. There was a lot of kids in the corner.
Yeah.
In the corner. And I mentioned this before, and when I talked to Excel, and some really successful kids come off that corner, and some weren't too successful that got involved with drugs and stuff. But my point is, there's a plaque that was given to my dad, and
It's all right, Steve. It's all right. It's all right.
but my point is, the plaque that was given to my dad is like from the kids in the corner.
Yeah.
But you gotta realize
It's all right. Take a minute.
that there was a lot of kids, you know,
Absolutely.
that had a lot of problems.
For sure.
And they felt back in the day that they had a father figure. They did have
Yeah.
a father figure,
Yeah.
but they didn't. They felt like no matter what they did wrong or right, mostly wrong, they felt like they weren't being judged.
Right.
You know.
That's right.
And I thought that was important.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely, and that's why we're happy to be here to do that, because we feel the same way from you, Stevie. So
Yeah.
it's always amazing to be able to come in here and just get the smile from you without even knowing what's going on.
It's crazy.
You know?
It's like it's you know it's just this little plaque, but it's probably the most treasured thing I have. You know?
Yeah. I love that. I love that.
Absolutely. But that means so much, and I really appreciate, you know, you really going in about that, because it's not easy to, you know, reflect on things like that, you know. But the fact that you were able to do so, and it clearly meant a lot to you, you know.
Right.
Without your dad, you know, none of this is really possible. So, you know, even
It's the background of it too. It's like the background of it is like it's like these kids. Some of them weren't like they didn't have a shot. You know,
Yeah.
Yes.
They had the shot, but they just went some different
Right,
direction.
right.
But
For sure.
they knew at the end of the day, like it was okay, like what they did. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's like they had a place to go. It's like Tommy Tass said, they had a place to go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Absolutely.
there was about a good 20 people over there. right between 25 in the corner, Byron Corner. There was a lot of kids, but my dad knew that the family, like, they were good as gold.
Right.
Of course.
He knew
of
all
course.
the mother fathers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And he knew all the situations. So he understood that kid was like, at one time, they were like a 5-6-year-old kid running around. They were like just normal.
Right, like
Yeah.
just,
You know what I mean? We
not a worry in the world,
Right,
nothing,
not
yeah.
one word, but what happens is, like, you know, shit happens, and some did really well, and some fell to the wayside. But he always kept them on a even
Right.
level.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, and we love that, and you know, we really appreciate, and we still to this day need that, because there's different struggles for the youth of today, and some people, you know, whether it's mentally, we hear that a lot nowadays, whatever it is, but. You know, like I mentioned earlier, you know, really appreciate you going in depth on that. But now we're going to talk about sports, and I'm curious. You talked about playing basketball when you were 14, 15. You still got that jump shot?
I don't know. You can ask Joshua.
Yeah. Josh, Steve, you still got that jump shot?
Oh,
Yeah. Josh.
So we had a little one-on-one last year, and I tore my Achilles playing Joshua.
Oh,
Yeah.
did you?
Yeah.
Oh man.
damn,
Oh man.
Yeah.
But you know, growing up, you know, you sharing that, it's always cool to, you know, laugh about it and think back. But you know, your favorite sports memories, is it, you know, more of you growing up being a youth? Is it, you know, more maybe professionally, like you saw professional sports so differently than how it is today? So I'd like you to share, you know, your childhood sports memories, maybe professional sports memories, and then if you have a player, I'd love to talk about a favorite player that you have.
Well, unfortunately, I hate to be the same old, but we really relished in the Larry Bird days.
Okay, no, listen, I love that.
Listen, rightfully so.
Yeah, you had a
Rightfully so.
competition with Magic, but it was a respected competition.
It was.
You know, but I think more so back then, we used to, back in the day, so I got married in 85, and I can remember when we were dating, like, so early 80s, we would have the black and white TV set up on the porch, and my wife would just sit out there and watch the Celtics games,
Yeah.
and there was nothing better than that.
Yeah,
We shut the volume and put on Johnny Most.
Okay.
But it was like crazy rivalries. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It was crazy.
Yeah.
And I would say those are the best days. Of course, growing up, you know, when you're younger, I say like 8, 9, 10, 12, you know, that was like Bobby Orr days.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was all, everybody was a Bobby Orr and Kenny Hodge and Esposito, and those were great days.
Some classic names right there.
Wow,
We
yeah,
love
legit.
hearing those.
Usyk and, you know, Chivas, but those were great days. But it wasn't only, and you probably attest to this, it wasn't only like that particular Bobby Orr day or Larry Bird day, but I enjoyed it because we would get together, I would get together
Right, it
with
was
my
like
wife.
yeah.
You know, I would get together with the guys.
Friends, yeah,
And
yeah.
They were
watch
like
that.
they were occasions.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? It wasn't just
Absolutely.
like sitting home.
Bobby Orr days was like, you know, I wasn't old enough, but we were younger, but all the cousins would get together. Sit down
nice.
on the floor, we'd watch like a Bruins game.
Yeah.
So that was like, it was about the community that you were in, the venue that you were in. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
That's what made it special.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, we love hearing the basketball. I know in East Boston back in the day, street hockey was such a big thing.
Street hockey was very big.
Were you a big street hockey guy back in the
I was
day?
big straight, yeah.
Yeah.
Street hockey.
So did you have a good slap shot? You maybe
So-
more of a goalie? What do we think?
So I was right wing.
Okay.
Yeah, so I really enjoyed street hockey. I tell you, another person just throw away, Tony Marmo,
Okay.
Bobby Travellini.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
they ran Palazzo Rink, and they once again, I mean, they did the same thing that you guys are doing. And like they were like he took these youth days and then bumped it up, and he looked over kids like you and and us.
Absolutely.
And,
Absolutely.
Tony Marmo and Bobby Trav used to be down there, Billy Maraday, and there was no ice, but that street hockey league was so phenomenal. There was a Czech league too. At the
Oh
time.
wow.
So there was Czech. I mean,
Roughing a couple people up, Steve.
it was crazy. I got bounced off the boards a
Couple times,
But you know, that's why you had to learn at that point, because I was smaller. You had to learn to be faster.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
For sure.
But that's why we always come back. We always hated the point because they're all so good. They're always really good. Debbie contested that. Debbie was a point girl, I think.
Yeah.
You know, but we had the street hockey. We had the same thing. The guys from Maverick. We had over here St. Mary's. We have Oba. We had the Heights. We had the Point. You know, and that came down to community. And at the end of the game, like, you just like the guys. Like, you know what I mean? Just like, you had your community, but you would just all got together.
Right.
It was no
Absolutely.
big deal.
For sure. No, and like just a testament to like when we grew up, or like when we would have like games back in the day when we were a lot younger. Now we can't do it without somebody banging up a knee, a hip, whatever it is.
We're all old now.
Yeah. But, you know, the schoolyard, the streets, whatever it was, like
we'd be in recess, we'd be like, all right, Orient Heights versus Jeffreys Point. That's it.
Yeah,
that's it. We're not picking teams, nothing. That's what it is.
If we didn't have a ball, like we literally play football or basketball
with like a pine cone.
Yeah,
like
really
just make it work.
And I know that sounds crazy because like that's just early 2000s, but we'd have a 20-minute lunch and like we're just looking to get like a little competitive and just like, you know, whether we have same teams on different days or we switch it up or like however we change the format of the game, whatever it was, it's always so cool to think back that like someone that I did it with is still someone I'm having like a conversation with like all these years later, and that's like just another thing about, you know, East Boston that's really so unique, but it also shows you, you know, the importance of sports and how it can really like bind people together, whether you have everything or you have nothing. And we literally would play wiffle ball in between cars on Everett Street just to be able to, you know, do something. And
constant. I mean, you guys that you play football in the street constantly.
Yeah, exactly.
What was the end zone?
Exactly.
What was out of bounds?
Yeah, I mean, we're using fire hydrants as the goal line.
Like water breaks every time a car would drive by.
Yeah,
To this day, I love seeing kids like going down the street. I don't feel like, you know, I feel bad going down the street, but they have to move the nets. I said, I love seeing that.
Absolutely.
So it's not strictly all these organized sports.
For sure. It's so unique, and when I see that nowadays, like we're up in Wakefield now, but you know, sometimes whether you're walking around, like you see people have like the backyard basketball hoops, the hockey nets, whatever it is.
Right.
It just reminds me so much of like what I grew up with, and it was just anything, like I said, we can get like our hands on, no matter what the sport was. We were playing it all. Now there were definitely some interest that peaked like a little bit later on that maybe we would drift a little bit more towards basketball in the top one days. It's a lot harder to get 18 people together to do like a baseball game, you know what I mean, to do like a 9-on-9, but even so we would do home run derbies down the stadium when we finally got some fences at those fields and things like that. It was really cool. So that's why, you know, it's always unique with since the Sandbox specifically making that merge of community and sports. And that's why I know they're very different topics, but I love talking about both in the show, and I wouldn't do it any other way. But Stevie, our last question here in the sports section, and Kev, if you have anything else, you can feel free to chime in after that. Have we ever had any professional sports athletes walk in here?
Marshawn
walked in here?
Nice.
Okay. We love that.
I'm trying to think if anybody else. Marshawn was like a few years ago.
We love that.
Wow.
Do you remember what he got by any chance?
I don't.
That's okay.
I think Stevie might have weighed on him. I forget what he got.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna have to change that. I gotta get a couple more in here to understand some of the best subs in Boston. Absolutely. So Stevie, just before we wrap up, you know, just really want to give you the floor to share anything you like. Feel free to mention anything about Carlos, about the episode. You know, did you like your experience?
I love my experience.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was great. I think it's great, but I think it's like, I think there has to, you know, I didn't have anything planned out, but I think about when you name your podcast Since the Sandbox, there's a lot. I think there's a lot of meaning behind it.
Of course there
I think
is.
you guys, I don't know if you can put into words, but when you say Since the Sandbox, it's like, it's not about like if I talk to you about, well, explain that. What games did you play? Did you win? You lose? You don't even know if you won or lose.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So you know that you made relationships. You know you made friends, and I think that's what it comes down to, like the transfer. I think that transfer, like when you talk about sports, you guys talk about sports all the time. Obviously, you know what I'm saying is the main feature. But you talk about sports, and when you talk about amateur sports, you talk about like it's really not the wins and losses, and not to be corny about it, but it is the journey. Like it's not like when you say it's a journey, it's like how'd you do when you lost? How'd you do when you won? How'd you how did you react to it? Like how did you come back from that? All that
for sure.
And it's sort of like, you know, just then kind of jumping around, like it's sort of it's a lot like business.
Yeah.
You know what
Absolutely.
I mean? It's a lot like business. There's a lot of times that, like when anybody mentions a competitor of ours, you know, which at this level, like nobody's competitor anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
But I always stand up for them because, hey, listen, that person is getting up early every day.
For sure.
That person is going home late every day. Like you don't knock another competitor.
No.
Don't knock another business. You know, so
Nobody knows the grind that goes behind
exactly. So you know, kudos to everybody out there, all the businesses, and in the sense of Sandbox, it's like a lot of that correlates to business, where like pleasure in business, where you make friendships, and that's what it's about. When you talk about the store and why you like it, it's like it comes back to that. It's like comes back to relationships and business and all that. Like knowing people, talking to people, and getting deeper into their like personal life and what they're about. And,
absolutely.
It's more than that. It's more than the actual sport itself.
It is. Thank you for understanding that, because I feel like a lot of people really don't, and like even when like since the Sandbox was just a conversation back in 2019, we're going on 4 years now.
Yeah, I know, that's crazy.
But
good job.
Thank you. Yeah. But Danielle mentions it to me like all the time. Like shout out to Danielle. It's we're since the Sandbox, and that perfectly advertises us. But for somebody that looks at us as a sports podcast, would that make them think of it differently because it is since the Sandbox? But I still wouldn't change it for anything, because in our conversation, you should hear that camaraderie and that connection throughout the conversation. Whether you're someone that grew up with us, or whether you're someone that we've known for a long time, or not at all. Like we've even had, a couple of guests like Kyle Arrington, DraftKings, like they were all on the show this past winter, and all those conversations were really natural. So that's why I wouldn't change that for the world. And since the Sandbox, that it is more of a meaning than just a sport or a community, no doubt.
Yeah. And you know something? People don't like to talk. You guys get people to talk. A lot of people don't, unless they're asked to talk, they don't talk.
Yeah, absolutely.
They really don't.
Yeah.
Because sometimes as well as I do, you might go up to someone, cold turkey, and say, "Hey, how you doing?" And people kind of step back. But when you create a venue like this and you create an atmosphere, like now we're going to talk.
Just talk. That's right.
To me about something. It's like somebody, you're giving something, but somebody's listening to that, saying,
absolutely.
"I never thought. I always wanted to say that. I never thought of it like that."
Yeah. And there's so many people, and Kev, I know you have something to add. There's so many people that have probably walked in here that didn't know any of those backstories, or didn't know Mike from Southie made the Sammy Lammy Bammy, you know what I mean? And I feel like that's why we like doing things like this, not only highlighting amazing people in our community that are doing great things, but to also just make sure people understand that there's a lot more that goes into it. And with the restaurant specifically, like I'm sure on the weekends you're doing shopping to make sure that Monday through Friday you're all set, prepared. You're making a gravy, you're crushing breadcrumb, whatever it is. And that's the same thing with the podcast. Like on the weekends, when people think that the work stops, like it's still going on. Like there's production that still needs to happen. There's planning that needs to happen for going forward. Like we have another live podcast next weekend. We talked about street hockey a little bit earlier. We'll be live at the Jeffreys Point Street Hockey Tournament, so come down and see us. Might have to grab a 6-foot sod to come down there.
You got it.
But no, that's... It's just so important. But Kev, I know you had something.
And I'll make it quick. But just to kind of retract on what you said, Stevie, because it really stood out to me, was like how it kind of like sports and business kind of like intertwine. Because I think you're right. Because I think, especially nowadays, like I feel like a lot of people, like there's the athletes that all they do is win, but they're horrible to their fans. They don't, like things like that. Same with like business. Like there's businesses that are Fortune 500 businesses, but treat their employees like shit. Treat their customers like shit. Where it's like my favorite athletes are the ones that can win, but can also be
those
humans.
people.
And same with this. Like if I'm gonna go get lunch, I'm not gonna go get lunch somewhere where I just get a sub and leave. Like I'm gonna go to lunch somewhere where I can buy a sub, talk to Stevie while I'm waiting, tell a couple of jokes, feel comfortable sitting in here and eating lunch, not just like, all right, I'm gonna go get a sub because
5-star plate,
because this place is good. And I feel like that's what makes you guys so special, because you're both. Like you guys have really good food, but there also is that camaraderie. There's that comfortability where it's like, all right, not only am I gonna get a good lunch, but I'm also going to enjoy myself in the process. You know what I mean?
And the people, yes.
And it's the same with athletes. Like, not only is this guy the MVP of the NFL, but, he's out in the community hanging with kids that are
just like Josh Allen specifically.
Like just like that. But like I feel like that's such like a good point though, because a lot of people don't think about that. But it's like, you can have a successful business and still be like a good person and still be part of the community. Like just because you're at the top or because you're successful doesn't mean that you can't give back. And I think that's kind of the whole underlying thing of this episode.
Absolutely.
But I think that's what's also so special about you guys, is you guys provide both. You know?
Years ago, it was like everybody was expanding. Not everybody, but you have tunnel vision on who's expanding. And years ago, I made a choice. Like, it's like I don't want to go anywhere else.
Yeah,
I like,
exactly.
I'd rather build on. I
We got a special guest walking in. Right.
Wow, this is-
My wife.
No, we love
But
that.
I-
Didn't mean to interrupt.
But I gotta give you guys credit because do you guys remember the other podcast company that was out of East Boston or Boston?
What was it?
yeah.
That's
wow.
my point.
Oh, yeah,
exactly,
that's good.
yeah.
Wow.
You guys, kudos to you. It's like
Yeah.
this is it. This is groundbreaking stuff.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
it's
appreciate that.
anybody out there is like, you know, if you think you want to start something, do something.
Yeah.
This is it right here.
Thank
And,
you.
you know, it's special.
That's
I
right.
loved it. I love that.
Thank you.
I love to see people like you succeed.
Stevie, it means the
Appreciate
world,
that,
and
yeah.
we really appreciate you. There's a lot of things you could be in Maine for the weekend. You could be working, whatever. But you decided to come and have this conversation with us, and we couldn't be happier. Maybe we have to make this an annual occurrence or whatever it is. But this really was a great time, guys. We are wrapping up this episode, so once again, come down to Sammy Carlo's. What's it? 567 Bennington Street.
You got it.
567 Bennington Street. Come grab a sub. Tell them since the Sandbox sent you. And in a couple of weeks, maybe you come in here and grab a Born and Raised in Eastie t-shirt. But we have live podcasts throughout the month of August. We have all of our fantasy football content coming out. So make sure you guys come. Show some love to Stevie and the great job that all his staff and his family really does. Come check out Since the Sandbox. But we also have to shout out the amazing people that came for the show today. So we got a shout out to everybody over here. We got family all around. Really love that. Great experience here. Peace and love. You guys know the deal. 5 stars.